Hi, I'm Reggie Turner. I'm here with Jim Miller, and the Flipside starts right now. Welcome to the show. Tonight we're going to start off talking about the state of Maryland and a redistricting effort that is being led by Governor Wes Moore in regards to moving around the congressional maps. We're less than 24 hours from all the primaries around the state being settled, and now we're right back into another political battle. And Jim, just to give a little background, this proposal would amend the Maryland State Constitution by removing language requiring congressional districts to be compact and generally follow county borders. Now, the problem with that is, some of our counties are vastly different from one side to the other and things of that nature. And supporters argue that this would handicap itself in combating things like Texas and what Florida did at the pressing of the President of the United States. And then others say, well, are we just removing the guardrails for more partisan gerrymandering as we move along? So basically the map that's being proposed would remove Republicans from the one congressional district that they have that's now represented by Republican Andy Harris.
Right.
There. And it would, in essence, it would give Democrats an 8-0 congressional advantage. The House approved it this year, but it stalled in the Senate with President Bill Ferguson.
Right.
was a holdout in regards to that. And, we have a history of this in Maryland. Maryland has long been criticized for their gerrymandered maps. And in 2022, they were rejected. So my question for you tonight, Jim, to start us out is, partisan gerrymandering an issue?
Oh, absolutely.
Or,
Okay.
or is this just following the lead of the president?
Yeah,
We could say see all of the above too.
yeah,
right?
it is all of the above. Here's the problem. Here's the problem with this particular issue. We talk all the time and we see all the time in Congress and in the Senate where when somebody changes the rules and what's required for cloture or something like that, the saying is what's good for the goose is good for the gander, because either the Democrats or Republicans change a rule because they're in charge and it suits their purpose to change the rule, and then the other side gets in and they want to change it back because it doesn't suit their purpose anymore.
Yeah.
Well, with states and legislative districts, that's not quite the case. When was the last time that Maryland was largely Republican? When was the last time that Texas was largely Democrat? Or California largely Republican? Or Wyoming largely Democrat? I mean, there's examples all over the country. So when you make these changes, you're making them for the long term. And the problem I have with it, I'm not arguing, and I'm not smart enough to argue, that saying that congressional maps should always follow county lines makes sense. But I also don't think that District 6 should be partially in Allegheny County and partially in Carroll County and partially in Frederick County and all over Montgomery County, all over the state. I don't think that makes sense either. So what is the happy medium, and who's going to get us there? Certainly not these states. And by the way, this would make Maryland potentially all Democratic, right? We're not alone. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Hawaii, Connecticut, Delaware, Vermont, all Democratic. And oh, by the way, it's not just the Democrats. Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, Oklahoma, Arkansas, West Virginia, all Republican, 100%. Now, does that have to do with congressional maps? I'm not 100% sure. But the fact of the matter is, there are many states, I think that number is, well, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 14 of them that are all one party or the other. That's a pretty high percentage out of 50 states. Did I answer your question?
You gave me some things to chew on there. You know, the thing though, when Republicans cry foul about this in Maryland,
But not about it in Texas.
right? So when Texas was happening before Maryland entered the picture, there was no, hey, this is not right, because there could be unintended consequences that happen in our state. Like, a lot of times our politics are in a vacuum, right?
Oh, they are.
You know, one party supports, you know, what's happening around the country that's led by the chief executive, and we're going to go and yes and do this, but don't look at what the impact can be in your backyard. So it's really tough for me to listen to an argument of crying foul now if you weren't standing up when you were seeing this happen
in other
places. Here's the other side of that picture. I am on social media. I'm friends with Rick Walden, who's the president and CEO of the Frederick Kitt Chamber.
Right, very familiar.
And you know, Rick is known to give a lot of commentary in regards to
a little bit
politics and how he feels about things. And one thing that he said that just caught my attention was, you know, the Maryland Supreme Court could feel very differently about what the legislature may try to do. And what he was reminding people of on his social media page, that in 2002, something like this was happening, but when the Supreme Court, the Maryland Supreme Court stepped in, it opened the door for him as a Republican to serve in regards to that. So Democrats may be trying to go from 7-1 to 8-0. Is that a little greedy? But there could be unintended consequences, right? Because it could, you know, what if the maps are redrawn to make CD6 more attractive for a Republican?
I don't know how you do that, but it's possible.
If you cut out Montgomery County out of CD6.
Yeah, it is more Republican.
It is more Republican, right?
So you're saying maybe the congressional changes, maybe the map changes, just re-levels the field in other ways.
Right.
So you can't look at it, you say, okay, we have 8 districts.
But if the Maryland Supreme Court steps in,
yeah, maybe
right?
the Republican district is now in the western part of the state rather than where it is.
I mean, and again, I surf around on social media. I see folks' comments like, what if CD6 is changed to be more Republican? You cut out the affluent Montgomery County, you know, you move that around a bit. Does that open the door for a Congressman Quarterman?
Could be. Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know, but again, but I think
I would be shocked if some of the folks that are thinking this are thinking about the unintended consequences. They're living right here, and they're saying right now, today, this could potentially benefit us, and we could make it 8-0. Just the same as I'm sure Texas did when they did their thing.
Yes. Now, and the other thing is, this is gamesmanship politics too, right? Because if we look at this, you know, Governor Moore is leading this effort, right? He started with this commission, right? To get the result that he was looking for to move forward, right? He got the result that he wanted to from the commission, but also a move like this keeps him in the national spotlight.
It does.
Right? Because what's being teased over the next 2 years is whether he's going to run or whether he's not going to run. And then this is kind of fluffing his resume in regards to this is what the Maryland governor did in response to President Trump and that move. But again, that's a short view, but a constitutional amendment will have long-term consequences past this election cycle, well past, the 2 years left that President Trump will have.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There are other issues around this. And again, obviously the biggest one is the notion of, is this just an attempt to be able to do more political gerrymandering? The other issue is the whole notion of mid-cycle congressional redistricting. And we got to figure out whether we're going to do that or not, I think. And I think we need to do that at a national level. There are some elements, there are some things that the federal government should control. There are some things that the state government should control. And while I understand and agree with the notion that state governments should largely control elections, it seems like this is a mess, not only in Maryland, but in all of those other states that I mentioned. So I think there's more issues going on here than just the single issue of the redistricting. The other thing that is possibly a topic, as I understand it, in this special session, and by the way, the special session has not been called yet officially.
No,
there are two dates
it's
they're
planned for
looking at.
August.
Well, there's a June date and an August date.
A June date?
July date.
Yeah.
There's a July date and an August date, and they've told the legislators to keep both of those dates open. But the other issue that may get brought up here is revisiting the legislation that creates special elections to fill certain legislative vacancies rather than relying solely on the appointment process.
Right.
So that has some significant downstream. I mean, think just in the last 20 years or so, we've had a fair amount of turnover in delegates and senators and so forth.
We've had a farm system in our community, right?
Right, exactly.
Where each party has a small group of individuals have placed their favorite in without the voice of the voters.
Yeah. Which, in my mind, the better way to do that is a special election, but there's also a significant cost to that.
Right.
Plus the fact that, we saw that 16% of the registered voters showed up for the primary that we've known about forever.
And so a special election will probably even be a smaller, more partisan slither.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that doesn't make sense either. Plus, it takes a lot of the power away from the Republican Democratic Central Committees in the various
I'm okay
communities.
with that.
Well, yeah. I'm not commenting on that, but you and I are probably similarly positioned.
Sound like you commented on that.
Okay. And then, of course, there's the timing piece, because if we're going to get this, it has to be approved by the General Assembly before the statutory deadline to appear on the November 2026 ballot.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, if they do this, what is unique about this proposal is that they're doing it, they're not trying to redistrict as part of this, they're just trying to change the way we do redistrict.
Right.
And I would think that would be a hard thing to fight in court before November in terms of saying, well, we shouldn't put this on the ballot because on its face it's unconstitutional. Would you agree, or am I?
Well, I would imagine, like, could Republicans just run out the clock by appealing the rulings?
I don't know.
But Jim, we need to take a break. Obviously, we're going to have more about this in the coming weeks, in regards to what this is going to look like and when the bodies are going to convene to be able to talk about this matter. But let's come back and talk about health insurance in the state of Maryland, which is becoming a huge issue.
Yes.
All right. Stay with us. We'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. We're shifting away from politics and we're starting to talk about something that affects the pocketbook of every Marylander, and that is healthcare costs. Health insurers have requested, on average, a 13.7% premium increase in the individual marketplace next year, Jim. And here's a few facts that I've pulled together relative to here in the state of Maryland. Approximately 482,000 Marylanders receive coverage through individual and small insurance market plans. Nearly 282 purchase insurance directly through the Maryland Affordable Care Act marketplace. And last year, they had requested roughly about a 17% increase. And regulators approved, on average, 13%. And public hearings are going to start later this month with a final decision in the fall. And why do costs keep rising? Because the insurers point to several factors. Hospital costs are higher, increased prescription drug prices, greater utilization of healthcare service. Baby boomers are aging, right? And the expiration of the subsidies for the ACA. I think the thing that stands out to me is not just that premiums are rising, it's the fact that healthcare inflation is outpacing wage inflation.
But doesn't it always? I mean, I remember when I was negotiating health care for my business, there were years where we had 20% increases, 26% increases. If we got 11, 12, 13%, I thought it was a gift. And I hear the same thing out of the company that I work for now. The increases are just crazy. And how do you deal with those? And it's a constant battle. And you would like to think that maybe some of this fraud that has been identified may help reduce some of that, but I don't think we're going to, if we see any of that happen, I don't think it's going to be in the next year or so. I think it's going to take some time. And by that time, the fraudsters will figure out a new way to defraud the government or whoever.
But we always talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. Like,
Right.
How much of that is in the system that's going to really move the needle?
I don't know. That's the problem. I don't think we know. I think some of the recent epiphanies that we've had relative to fraud have been eye-opening, at least for me. But do we know those numbers? No, I don't know those numbers. The ACA Marketplace Premium, on average for 2026, is expecting about a 20% increase, which ranges from a high in Mississippi of 36.8%. Maryland, believe it or not, is actually the lowest on the list. Mississippi, of the list of, if you look at Mississippi, 36.8, Washington State, 22.4, Connecticut, 16.2, Maryland's at 13.4. So maybe we should be thankful.
I don't know about being thankful, Jim. This is a nationwide crisis.
It is.
Right? How many times have you had a 13% pay raise in a year?
Yeah.
Right?
Rarely.
So, and healthcare costs are within a household's budget second only to housing costs.
Yes.
Right? So, at a time where, our largest population of baby boomers are aging and these prices are skyrocketing, and we are, on previous shows, we've already talked about the inflation relative to our utilities, healthcare, and the fact that wages are not keeping up. Like we're that gap that we've talked about many times between the have and the have-nots continue to increase with these issues. So that's really concerning. And remember, the numbers we're giving, we're talking about the average, right? When
Right.
we were off air, we we were privy to a phone call where we had an employer on the line saying that the increases that her business was going to see was about 50%.
Yeah.
And that not only was the cost for her employees was going up, but what she was going to have to pass on to families
Right.
is going to be absorbent as well.
Well, but let's talk about one thing. And you and I and Terrence and others that are on the show have no issue beating up the state of Maryland on various issues, including potentially redistricting. But Maryland has what's called a reinsurance program. And the estimate is that without that reinsurance program, the 13 or 15% number could be 30 or 35% higher than that. So, again, there's plenty we can yelp about in Maryland, but health insurance management is something that this state seems to do pretty well. And again, since it's the second largest expense in a household, compared only or second only to housing costs, that's a significant benefit.
Yeah. I would just, I would love to have an estate official or an expert on, because I would love perspective on, are we working towards solving the long-term problem, or are we just managing the crisis year to year? Because obviously this is significant. I mean, we're talking significant.
Well, and you have
increase.
to wonder, I know that I have heard, obviously I'm not a healthcare provider, but I have heard that we order a lot of tests just to protect ourselves from being sued as a healthcare provider, which of course drives up cost. How much does the fear or the actual impact of being a very litigious society, how much does that impact what these rates are? And you had mentioned about the increase in cost. So 4.8% is the expected hospital services increase, 6.1% for physician services, 10.4% pharmaceuticals. Those are significant in and by themselves. But what's that cost of litigation, and how does that impact this? That's not a number that I've ever heard, or that's not a number that I've seen data that suggests how much that causes the increase to go up. I don't know, maybe you have some data on that.
I do not have any data on that. But to that, and then also thinking about, the phone call when we were offline, the one question I didn't get to ask is, right, we already know that employer costs are going up. We already know that they're passing on cost to employees. I guess the third question I would have loved to have asked was, will this slow hiring, right? Or will it reduce workforce, right? Could this become an employment issue?
Well, or will it cause employers, my employer today passes some of the costs along, but I think it's having an idea of what they pay for my coverage versus what I pay, I don't complain much.
Right.
There's still employers that cover 100% of healthcare costs. Mm-hmm. Does this cause them to rethink the percentage that they reallocate back to the employee? And in some cases, if not many cases, I bet it does, because there's only a certain amount that that an employer can take on.
Right.
It's just impossible. The numbers just don't work.
So now you're cutting into profits.
Right.
And, individual families are being squeezed. And, families with smaller amounts of disposable income, or those that are living paycheck to paycheck, this squeeze can be very detrimental.
It absolutely can. And of course, this comes at the same time that we're still seeing super high gas prices, food prices are still continuing to increase. Inflation, the inflation rate as a percentage may look smaller, but the impact, just based on the large numbers we had for a couple of years, plus the continued, I'm still going to call them reasonably large numbers. And wages are not keeping up.
Right. You know, the question is that
How much do you want to pay for that McDonald's hamburger? Now they probably don't provide benefits for their part-time employees. I get that, but I mean, take any service.
yeah,
Think about the cost of the business, and you know, a lot of these businesses, restaurants included. I read an article just a week or so ago. Restaurants are one of the lowest gross margin businesses that you can own.
yeah.
And margins are getting squeezed all over because of competitive issues from other countries.
I'm just, as we sometimes, there's a lot of there, right, in regards to this and the impacts of what this is going to have on the underlying economy throughout the state. Because again, we're talking averages. Some businesses are getting hit tremendously harder than that average of 13%. And what happens when families and individuals start to decline health care insurance to roll the dice to keep that little bit of extra in their pocket because of rising costs. Again, so it puts families in a tough position of making very tough choices. And if you have individuals and or families not taking on health insurance to stay solvent, what happens when individuals and families get sick?
Well, that's exactly right, and
Right.
can't pay for it.
And can't pay for it.
And then the hospitals have to write it off.
Right.
Right.
But there's only so much capacity that these hospitals have to be able to do that.
And when they write it off, guess what happens? Their prices increase
Right.
to make up for it. So it's a vicious circle.
It's a vicious circle.
And you know, it's been a vicious circle. And before the Affordable Care Act, it was a vicious circle. It was a vicious circle after the Affordable Care Act, and with the, you know, the recent changes and the removal of the subsidies and so forth. And I understand those subsidies were supposed to be temporary. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah. And you know, that's one of the reasons that I admire Dr. Malik Joshi's long-term view relative to healthcare in the medical school, right? The long-term view is that our community over time will have more providers within our community. We'll have more supply of specialists on hand.
We hope.
We hope. I'm very confident that we will. If you know, we're about to enter into the second class of the medical school, and many of the individuals that are in these programs are integrating themselves and volunteering within the community. And you would imagine that over time that you will have individuals that will have an affinity for this community and will want to start their practice and their careers here. That was kind of the bet that was made, but that was a long-term view. I would just love to understand some other long-term views of solving this problem as opposed to managing it year to year. Because it's, you know, it's almost like, you know, you're managing a crisis relative to increases. And I don't know, we're never going to be in a period where wages are rising at 13, 17, 20%.
Not that I've asked this question to hundreds or more business owners, but the business owners I have talked to about this, renegotiating health care is their worst fear every year because they know what it's going to be. And it's not a question of if you do it, it's a question of how you do it.
Right.
And how much do you have to then pass on to the employees? How much do you have to raise your prices elsewhere to cover those costs? Again, it's a vicious circle.
Yeah. But this is one of those issues that I'm sure we'll be circling back to because, number one, we'll find out what the increases are going to be after the public hearings.
Yep.
and we'll monitor things from there. But Jim, let's take a break. We want to come back. We want to talk a little bit more about the ICE facility. I know we've talked about that in previous segments. A little bit more news on that. So let's come back and talk about that after the break.
Okay.
Stay with us. We will have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. This segment, we're jumping back in on a topic that we have talked about that's very prevalent in our community, Jim, the proposed ICE detention facility near Williamsport. One of the things about this facility that I did not realize is that this facility will be one of the largest in the country.
Yeah.
The warehouse exceeds about 800,000 square feet. They were talking about more than, they're looking at 1,500 beds.
Yep.
And processing there. And we're in a period of public comment. I know that the state of Maryland, and led by the Attorney General, has filed suit basically saying that the federal government failed to adequately evaluate the environmental and infrastructure impacts before moving forward. But there's been more than 3,000 public comments already submitted. But
what do they say? Do they say, I hate it or I love it?
Well, I'm sure you got a mixture of both in 3,000 comments.
But I wonder how many. I mean, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, clearly anybody that's a Republican would be, well, I don't know that they want it, but they would be more apt to want it.
Yeah. But I think there's different conversations to be had for this facility. I mean, obviously one is immigration policy, right? That's the glaring one. But the other one is like federal authority and community input, and then also land infrastructure use. And how much input should a local community have relative to federal authority in that community?
How much input should a local community have relative to state authority? Did we have a lot of say in Hagerstown about the 2 jails that got constructed here?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah.
But I'd be willing to bet.
But I think if you look at history, though, there were a lot of unintended consequences with those 2 jails here, right?
There were.
Because the low-hanging fruit, or what I've seen from Republicans, is, oh, we want the jobs, bring it here, right? But economists have looked at this and said that communities like Hagerstown that are suffering from low economic activity are apt to do things like bringing prisons in because of the jobs and the wages that they bring. But the unintended consequences was everything that you brought with it, right? Because now if you're on social media, you always hear, well, such and such crime happened and it wasn't someone from here. And
it was somebody that was released from prison.
It was somebody from released from prison and they stayed here, or they met someone and they took up roots here. So, there's unintended consequences of these things, of these decisions. And it seems like a lot of this has become politically where you stand as opposed to broadly looking at this. And the big one is, it's almost the same argument when it comes to data centers in a certain way, right? Water and wastewater capacity.
Well, that's exactly right.
Emergency services, traffic, environmental review. Like those things are very important to this conversation.
So I read one report that said that this facility at full capacity could generate more than 187,000 gallons of water daily.
Daily, yeah.
That's huge.
So again, Jim, from your perspective,
because guess what? We are not rich with water resources now.
Right.
Right? We already have issues. We're not able to do some of the development we want to do because of potential water issues and sewer issues.
So do you believe it's the federal government should be obligated to answer those questions and then there should be more public comment?
I think, yeah, they should answer those questions and If significant improvements are needed to our water system to do that, they should have some skin in that. They should have some skin in Interstate 81. That's one of the issues I have with the local council, or not council, commissioners just greenlighting this thing. Did we try to negotiate some things that would help this community, like upgrading water, upgrading? I mean, that's, you know, they're spending all this money on this facility. And by the way, even though there's a court injunction, they're still doing construction out there. They're still securing the facility because apparently there's been a number of cases of vandalism out there. So they're allowing them to proceed with some of those improvements, but those improvements are still significant and will make it that much easier to open at a point at which
if they get the go ahead.
Go ahead, right. But and as I understand it, the central legal issue is an environmental review, right? So
which is hugely important.
It is. And how long would it take if the federal government said, you know what, you're right, you need to upgrade your water system, we'll come in and do that? How long does that take? That's not a 10-month project.
Right.
Right? That's an I-81 level project.
But then the question becomes, since this is a political issue, right? If 2 years from now administrations change from R to D, the money may be allocated to that, but what creative things could a Democratic-led government be able to do to divert that money to something else?
Right.
And then you've built up this infrastructure of something that's never going to get utilized.
Well, I would argue if we upgrade our water system, we'd find a way to utilize it.
Well, I'm not even talking about the upgrade, but I'm talking about the facility.
Make it a data center. I'm kidding about that. We declared a moratorium on that for at least a year. Funny how that is sending it just past the elections.
Yeah. But I take away the politics. This is a community redevelopment project, right? If you take away the politics of what it is, it's a community redevelopment project. So, you know, and that's kind of some of the sticking points, right? It's the federal government leading this, but from the county's involvement to go through this process without public comment.
Well, you know, that's a good point. And what I was going to talk about next is the number of community groups that have suggested that this whole project has lacked any level of transparency.
Right.
And I would argue that they're by and large correct.
And I you know, let's piggyback off our conversation last week. If there are 2 Democrats that get in, this will be the central issue that we'll come back and point to as to why.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that warehouse was not designed for human occupancy.
Right.
Right? It was designed as a commercial warehouse with limited restroom facilities, limited support. You know, what are the conversion requirements there?
I mean, those are all questions that need to be answered, but I believe that no matter what side of the aisle you sit on, you should be demanding you should be demanding full
What's your theory?
transparency.
I read something that said that one of the significant impacts that it could have is on tourism. Do you think, based on where it is, I mean, tourism in Washington County, there's many things you would come to Washington County to see. I don't know any over in that particular area. Do you think that argument holds water?
I think it holds water because there can be a stigma attached.
So you're saying...
Washington County already has a stigma because of the prisons.
Okay.
You
wouldn't tell that in our hotel motel occupancy rate, which is in usually, last time I checked, in the high 80s, low 90s.
Yes, but I just wonder what it would look like without those prisons. I wonder what our community growth would look like. I wonder what the projects the unintended projects of the corporations, the businesses that will want to move to our community without that. Like, I mean, obviously we can't measure that. But in my travels throughout the state and around this part of the country, people that have really not been to our community, you know, there's some stigmas and preconceived notions that they have about it. And if you hang out in some of the what's going on in Hagerstown chat rooms or the Herald Mail, like you see these things bubbling to the surface. And you know, we're already combating a community that still has an opioid epidemic. You know, we're still dealing with high poverty rates in the city core. I just don't think this helps to have such a polarizing project in your backyard. I look at it relative to data centers. I really don't see the juice being worth the squeeze. And the biggest thing is there's so many unknowns because this hasn't been a transparent process, right? I mean, until you can answer what are the strains on infrastructure and what are the solutions to that, it seems to be, it should be a non-starter.
Yeah. Well, of interest, Williamsport is not the only case where this is, the only community where this is happening.
Right.
There are 5 other sites at this point. Romulus, Michigan, DHS purchased a warehouse. They intended to move, to convert it into a detention facility. There were legal challenges, and now apparently the government is no longer intending to retrofit it and is looking at, or was looking at selling it. Social Circle, Georgia, they purchased a warehouse exceeding 1 million square feet. Local officials and residents raised concerns. By June 2026, officials reported that the federal government was no longer interested. Tremont Township, Pennsylvania, John Fetterman announced just this recent June that ICE would not move forward with that project. Upper Bern Township in Pennsylvania, again, federal officials reportedly canceled the plans in June 2026. And I didn't know about this one, but Howard County, Maryland, did you know about that one?
Was rejected.
Was rejected.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, they're running out of space. Are they going to go buy 10 more warehouses, or are they going to try to shove it down Washington County's throats?
But the irony of this conversation, there was a 1-year moratorium put on the data center conversation while a study is happening.
Right.
But this is being shoved down
Through
the community.
without that moratorium. Of course, the moratorium is the court case.
Right, but there's no study.
Right. Well, that's true. Absolutely.
Right. This deserves the same type of environmental study to be done. But so it's hard to separate the politics from the legitimate issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and you know, yeah, exactly. And supporters will always find a reason that the issues are not legitimate, and opponents will always find a reason that everything is a legitimate issue. And the truth is, as always, somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Jim, let's take a break. We'll come back with our final segment. We'll talk about the Washington County Ag Expo, how they're reinventing themselves.
Excellent.
All right. Stay with us, and we'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. Jim, we're going to end tonight with something a little bit lighter than the heavy topics we've been talking about. And fun.
And
yeah.
fun. And successful.
And successful. But the Washington County Ag Expo won't have carnival rides this year. They weren't able to secure an operator.
Yeah.
So they are reinventing themselves. And instead of counseling, they're reimagining it. And from my notes here, what's new is they're going to have catch and release fishing.
Which I think is very cool for the kids.
Yeah,
And frankly, fits in with the ag theme, right?
absolutely. Axe throwing, archery, escape room, farmer's market. That's where I need to be.
Yeah, I'll be doing the farmer's market
Yeah.
thing for sure.
And there will be online ticket sales. And what's staying is 4-H and FFA exhibits, livestock competitions, kids festivals, truck show, and diesel dirt drag. So it's good to see that in an environment where things may be challenging, that you didn't lose something that's, influential and very noticeable in the community. They were able to pivot and still offer a great experience for the community.
I don't know what the numbers look like on the ag fair every year. I would hope they're breaking even or making money. But I can tell you several things. Number one, that facility out there, it is a gem. It has all kinds of space. It has all kinds of parking. It has lots of different venues, indoor venues, pavilions, all types of things. It has open space that you can use for monster truck pulling or whatever you call it, or it's, in the past it would have been carnival rides, but there's so much opportunity there, and it's such a beautiful space. Number two, we have a rich history of agriculture in this community, and that often gets overlooked. And the fact that we host this, and we have these kids showing the cows that they raised, or the parents showing the pie that they baked, or whatever the case may be. All of these different little contests and elements, I think, really speak to what Washington County is at its core. We're not about prisons. We're not about ICE facilities. We're not about those types of things. We have some big business here, and we're very fortunate to have that. We have Volvo. We have, a number of other companies. But we also have this heritage. And I don't think you would find many residents of Washington County that would want to see it paved over like Montgomery County or somewhere else. I think that's part of the draw here. In addition to, we offer a little bit of everything for everybody, no matter what your goal is. And I hope it's successful, and I think it will be. I think the catch and release fishing will be a draw.
Yeah.
I think the axe throwing will be a draw. I did that last year, by the way, not there, but at an event. I think the archery will be a draw. Escape rooms are all the rage now, right? So, and the fact that people can purchase tickets online will be excellent. I don't know what role the Convention and Visitors Bureau has in promoting this, but if they're involved in it, I bet it'll be well promoted too, and I bet we'll see out-of-town guests come in to participate and to take advantage of this event and that beautiful facility.
Well, I have a confession to make.
Okay.
In my 30 plus years in this community, I have never been to the Ag Expo.
Okay.
Never been. And this really takes me back to my childhood, because I was a kid that grew up in 4-H in Appomattox, Virginia, and spent my summers at Holiday Lake in 4-H camp. So the catch and release and the archery, never done axe throwing, but some of these things that are involved take me back to my childhood. So I think this is the perfect opportunity for me to introduce Junior.
Oh, I think it would be an excellent opportunity.
Yeah.
As well as your beautiful daughters.
Yes.
So, but I think it's great. I think and they are still going to have some carnival type games. So those will still be around. But it'll be. I think it'll be good, and I think it'll be worth a visit. And they're having music too, right? They're going to have bands.
I believe so. The thing is, Jim, is, and I would imagine that county fairs around the country are grappling with, how do you keep events and fairs like this relevant for the next generation, right? But still tying to, culturally significant things that you've always done, and it looks like that they're really trying to address that here. So I'm interested to see how well this is received, what attendance is going to be like for this. So yeah, I'm definitely going to get this on the calendar and take the opportunity to.
These are the things that we overlook in this community that are very important, I think,
Yeah.
and myself included. I haven't been for a couple years to this event. Yeah, I'm definitely going this year for sure, and I'm going to try to take my kids, and we will maybe even put this in our crawl at the bottom of our Flipside TV screen about what's happening at the fair. So.
And it'll be interesting to see if some of these new activities become permanent additions. Like, the new things that they're bringing this year, like what I love for a debrief after to see like what really resonated with the community of the new things that they're bringing.
Well, there is a gentleman that's in charge of this, it appears. I believe his name is Joe Fry. Maybe we can get Mr. Fry on the TV show and talk to him about the upcoming fair. That would be probably a good thing.
Yeah. And, the other thing, Jim, is, the financial advisor to me is, are your liability costs coming down without the rods?
Well, yeah. 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 The exhibits, animals, plants, produce, food items, crafts, art and photography, all kinds of fun stuff there. I mean, there is literally something for everyone.
Right. But isn't it interesting, though, as we talk about data centers and as we talk about detention facilities that take up much of our open space and land, we're ending with something that celebrates
Open space and land.
Open space and land and how we utilize it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how this community has been built over.
Well, and we have farms in this community whose products are sought after. I have a friend in Deep Creek Lake who one year I took Brittner's corn up to, and I was talking to him again, and he wants me to bring him several dozen ears of Brittner's corn because he found it that good.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's good stuff.
All right, so we got to get someone on from the Ag Fest. We got to get someone on the debrief after.
Yeah. Well, or maybe even before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So excellent.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to stop it there, Jim. And until next time, and hopefully soon, we'll have the third member of the band back from his world travels, Mr. Moore.
Right. Yeah. Well, plus his commitment to the Leadership Maryland, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, that is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you will like us on Facebook, follow us on X, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. But more importantly, join us again next week for another episode of Flipside.